Let's say that you are in a grand art museum and looking at an exhibit. You see one painting that catches your eye. Up close, it looks like a big mess of random colors and shapes, but far away it looks like a portrait of a face. Who painted this? Chuck Close. Does he have a backstory? Oh yes, a very interesting one. In this speech, I'll be answering 3 questions about Chuck Close. What challenges did he face? How are these problems overcome? And did he achieve a significant goal? Chuck faced many challenges along his way to becoming an artist. They were like hurdles. Some were easy to jump over, others were so difficult that they would change his life forever. How would you feel if you had a learning disorder that nobody knew about, including yourself? Chuck had one exactly like that. People just figured he was dumb. Back when he was a kid, they didn't know about dyslexia or learning disabilities. How would you feel if you heard your teacher call you stupid or dumb behind your back? Chuck heard this a lot and even thought he was dumb himself. Then he found art. For him, it was like finding the perfect wedding dress for a bride. It took away from his disorder, and people didn't just look at him as stupid and dumb. Despite what teachers, other kids, and just about everybody else said, Chuck went to college. He started at the Washington School of Art, and then was accepted to the Yale University of Art and Architecture. There, he learned how art should be, not what he wanted to make it. Chuck went on to be a skilled artist after college. He started teaching at the University of Massachusetts. Of course he taught art. A little bit later, Chuck started focusing on his own art. His first big idea was to make enormous portraits of people's faces. His first one was of himself, entirely in black and white. That was all his first exhibit consisted of, black and white portraits of people's faces. He was in the high of his career until the event happened. In 1988, just before Christmas, Chuck was scheduled to give an art award and speech. Just before the show was about to start, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. What could this be? He just decided to shake it off and ask if he could go first. After his speech, he stumbled over to the emergency room, which was luckily across the street. Within a few painful hours, Chuck was paralyzed from the neck down. He had suffered a rare spinal artery collapse. This usually happens to people who have been in accidents or football players who have had a rough game. The doctors didn't know how this had happened to an artist who painted all day. Chuck's first thought was, my career is over. Then, questions started racing at him. How will I support my family? How will I support myself? What will happen to all the work I put into being an artist? Will I survive? Chuck was in a pretty tricky situation. I know what you're thinking. How could he possibly overcome this problem? Chuck didn't have many options about what to do with his life. He decided to go to rehab. He spent 7 long months there away from his family, friends, and art. He never really worked out in the gym before, but he was working out there every day in rehab. Soon he could walk again, but only a few wobbly steps. He would have to depend on a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Soon he came up with an idea to do art again, even if it took lots of time, care, and practice. It started with Chuck working out in the gym. He practiced with many different ways to strengthen his arm muscles. Soon he was ready to try. Chuck sat in a wheelchair with a brace on his hand. The brace could hold the paintbrush for him. He couldn't use his fingers, so his arm acted like his fingers. Soon he was back in business. Many tools helped Chuck regain his strength. He had an intelligent wheelchair that helped him move around. Also, a brace that holds the paintbrush for him. But the most powerful tool was a powerful lift that could hold Chuck when he was in his wheelchair. It helped him reach and paint in high places. Another tool was support from his friends and family. Chuck reached his goal of being able to paint again. Just because he thought he could never paint again didn't mean it was true. He was reaching a world that he thought he would never see again. At the beginning of his injury, Chuck was discouraged and unsure of the future. Then, when he'd gotten out of rehab and was home, he was happy and full of spirit. It was a long, difficult, intense journey that he had to face to be able to get back on with his life. Chuck had to change many things about his life to cope with his injuries and limited mobility. He had to get used to using a wheelchair all day and not being able to move his fingers. Chuck had to give up some of the things he loved because of what happened. He also had to start working out to strengthen his muscles. Chuck is still living and still painting. He has learned many things from what has happened to him. His injury has opened his eyes and showed him a different world. Chuck says, painting has assumed a larger share of my time. I'm really only left with my relationships with my work, my friends, my family, and other artists. But that didn't stop him from achieving his goals.